Over the course of this entire series of Drive-Through History, we've mentioned ancient prophecies about a future Messiah that the Gospels say were fulfilled in the life, ministry, death, and resurrection of Jesus. Remarkably, scholars count hundreds of these prophecies in the Hebrew Scriptures, over 300 in fact. Even more remarkable, these predictions were made by multiple authors over the course of about a 1,000-year time period. When the resurrected Jesus was eating fish with his disciples on the Sea of Galilee, he reminded them of the things that had happened during his ministry. For the first time, Jesus opened their eyes to all the prophecies that had been fulfilled by him. He said, "This is what I told you while I was still with you. Everything must be fulfilled that is written about me in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms." Luke 24:44. Again, we're talking about Jesus being the fulfillment of over 300 prophecies without missing a single note. The odds of that happening by chance are zero. And so for any person to fulfill them all, it would take their circumstances being divinely orchestrated. In fact, that is the claim of the Gospels. Now, while many of the prophecies of the future Messiah were general in nature, some were very specific, like where the Messiah would be born and how he would die. The Messiah will be a descendant of Abraham, of the tribe of Judah, of the house of David. He will be conceived by a virgin, born in Bethlehem, and taken to Egypt as a child. The Messiah will be heralded by the messenger of the Lord and anointed by the Holy Spirit to minister in Galilee, perform miracles, and preach good news. He will cleanse the temple, enter Jerusalem as a king riding on a donkey, be rejected by the Jewish people, and betrayed by a friend for 30 pieces of silver. The Messiah will die a humiliating death involving rejection, mocking, beating, the piercing of his hands and feet, and the piercing of his side. He will be crucified with thieves, and his executioners will cast lots for his clothing. They will give him gall and vinegar to drink, but unlike the other victims, none of his bones will be broken. In the end, he will be buried in a rich man's tomb, but will rise from the dead and ascend into heaven. Incredibly, none of that story I just presented to you comes from the Gospels. All of that is from the Hebrew Scriptures, written hundreds of years before Jesus was ever born. Perhaps more incredibly, we now have archaeological evidence that allows us to trust the credibility of those ancient prophecies like never before. The Dead Sea Scrolls have been called the greatest manuscript discovery in modern times. They were discovered near the Dead Sea between 1947 and 1956 in 11 caves in the hills above me. The discovery is comprised of hundreds of separate scrolls represented by tens of thousands of fragments, giving us an early glimpse at nearly every book of the Hebrew Scriptures, or what Christians call the Old Testament of the Bible. The Dead Sea Scrolls contain fragments of some of the most important Old Testament prophecies from books such as Genesis, Deuteronomy, Psalms, and Isaiah. And all of these fragments date to the time before Jesus. For example, the great Isaiah scroll is almost fully intact, all 66 chapters of Isaiah, containing some of the most dramatic prophecies of a coming Messiah. Based on various scientific methods, this scroll, now housed at the Shrine of the Book Museum in Jerusalem, dates to between 100 and 335 BC. This is such powerful evidence to me. The discoveries here at the caves of Qumran at the Dead Sea have revitalized and revolutionized our reading of the Messianic prophecies. We now have dramatic proof that the key Old Testament prophecies telling of a future Messiah were written long before Jesus ever walked the earth. There was no manipulation of the text by the early disciples, as was claimed by many before this discovery, and there was no conspiracy by the Roman Church hundreds of years later, as others have claimed. It just boils down to this. The evidence from archaeology points to the understanding that Jesus of Nazareth fulfilled the requirements of the Messiah that were foretold many centuries before he was even born.